I'm sure this isn't personal, Melissa said, tapping her manicured nails on the edge of my desk, like she was trying to summon a demon from mahogany. But starting next week, you'll be reassigned outside the merger initiative. Realignment. You understand? Realignment. Like I was an uneven picture frame she could just straighten out. I stared at the woman I once mentored through her first leadership off-site, back when she still asked me how to build pivot tables in Excel. Now she stood there with a brand new VP badge and a rehearsed corporate smirk, looking at me like I was a piece of outdated office furniture too heavy to throw out. On her tablet, a shiny new org chart glowed. My name wasn't on it. I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because silence has always been my sharpest weapon. Melissa was the kind who mistook quiet for surrender, arrogance for authority. She wore power like a brand new coat, tags still dangling. I'd seen her type before, executives obsessed with optics, allergic to accountability, and utterly blind to the fine print. Behind her, through the glass wall, the merger team buzzed. Analysts, project leads, compliance officers. My people. The same ones who'd spent 18 months building an integration plan that could survive a hurricane, and now I was out of scope. Sure, what Melissa didn't know was that the foundation of this merger, the whole thing, sat on one line of text I'd fought to include 8 months ago. Clause 9(2)(c), Service Continuity Certification by the original assurance officer. Me, Rachel Monroe. She thought she could airbrush me out of the picture. Cute. The first signs came weeks before the announcement. Meeting invites evaporated. Budget folders I'd created were suddenly relocated. My access to the merger Slack channels vanished overnight. When I asked for updates, people spoke in riddles. Oh, we're consolidating tasks. The direction's shifting. They acted like I didn't build the direction. Then came Melissa's thank you email to leadership, that classic farewell in disguise. We appreciate Rachel's long-standing contributions and will ensure she has visibility into the transition. Translation: pack your pride and sit quietly in the corner. I didn't argue. I just closed my laptop, walked to the break room, poured myself the last of the burnt coffee, and waited. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning of her mistake. That afternoon, my former intern, Ava Thompson, drifted toward my desk like a spy in a hallway drama. "Are you still reviewing the vendor continuity clause?" she whispered. "Always," I said, sipping coffee like it was bourbon. She nodded, understanding exactly what that meant. Clause 9(2)(c) was my insurance policy. I'd slipped it in months ago during a compliance review, when no one else cared to read beyond the executive summary. It required that any merger involving our top 3 enterprise clients include certification from the original project architect, me, before contracts could execute. Melissa never asked. She assumed contracts were decorative, pretty, flexible, optional. That night, I opened my external drive. Yes, the one labeled tax docs, because no auditor ever clicks that folder, and pulled up every version of the merger agreement. Drafts, track changes, time-stamped approvals, emails with legal counsel. My initials appeared on every revision. My fingerprints were everywhere. I didn't need to fight in meetings or beg for credit. I just needed to wait for the right meeting, the final merger review, the one where the lawyers walk through each clause before signatures. She thought I was out of the game. She didn't realize I was holding the rule book. The only thing more dangerous than being underestimated is being contractually essential. And Melissa was about to learn both lessons the hard way. 8 months earlier, the office smelled like toner, takeout, and exhaustion. The kind of scent only corporate America could bottle. Stress with a hint of burnt paper. We were huddled in a windowless conference room downtown, knee-deep in the early merger drafts. No one ever glamorizes those stages. The endless red lines, compliance reviews, or legal calls that stretch past midnight But that's where the real power hides. In the footnotes. In the clauses no one reads twice. Back then, I wasn't plotting revenge. I was protecting survival. The client, Titan Freight Logistics, a billion-dollar supply chain firm, had lawyers who could shred steel with their words. They didn't care about our press releases or Melissa's visionary integration strategy. They cared about one thing: continuity. Their legal rep, a woman named Laura Green, spoke flatly on the conference call, her tone cold enough to refrigerate the room. "If your project lead leaves mid-merger," she said, "we reserve the right to pause all services. Name the assurance officer responsible for continuity." The line went silent. Our executives froze, scanning the table for a volunteer like kids avoiding eye contact with the teacher. I raised my hand. "I'll take it," I said. "But I want it written." And it was. Buried in plain sight under Clause 9.2c. Continuity of service for Titan Freight requires certification by the listed assurance officer, Rachel Monroe. No one questioned it. They just nodded, eager to move on to slide decks and buzzwords. But that single sentence became my fortress. I stayed late that night, double-checking that it wasn't just a note in the appendix, but embedded in the operative text. Enforceable, binding, non-transferable. I even convinced our in-house counsel to strengthen the phrasing. "Make it explicit," I told her over greasy Thai noodles. "Not best effort. Binding." She'd looked up, one eyebrow raised. "You realize this makes you the choke point for a 9-figure deal, right? If they ever want to move you off the project, they'll need your certification to close." I smiled. "Then they better read the contract carefully." After it was finalized, I downloaded everything. Every draft, every email chain, every annotated comment. I encrypted the files, stored them in 2 separate drives, and backed them up in the cloud under an alias folder named 2019 Tax Receipts. Because if there's one thing corporate thieves never check, it's boring paperwork. Months passed. The deal grew. The press releases came. Melissa, who at the time was still a senior project manager, started orbiting the C-suite like a moth near the boardroom lights. She wore ambition like perfume, strong enough to choke you. I watched her play politics while I played defense, quietly ensuring the contract's spine couldn't bend even if the faces around it changed. When she got promoted to VP of Strategic Operations, she started cutting corners, streamlining workflows, centralizing oversight, all the usual buzzword smokescreens for consolidating credit. I stayed calm. The louder people shout about leadership, the less they're usually leading. By the time she started pitching herself as the face of the merger, I already knew what was coming. She was gunning for the presentation stage, the bonuses, the glory. The moment the org chart dropped without my name, I knew exactly where I stood. And more importantly, where she'd trip. Because the thing about corporate arrogance is that it doesn't read the contracts it signs. It just signs and celebrates. Melissa thought she'd built a throne. She hadn't noticed she was sitting on a trapdoor. Clause 9.2c wasn't a formality. It was the fuse. And when she decided to erase me from her team, she unknowingly lit it. By the time I poured myself another stale cup of office coffee, the clock was already ticking. She just didn't hear it yet. By the next week, the illusion of calm had cracked. You could smell the ambition in the air, sharp, metallic, and slightly desperate. Melissa strutted into Monday's leadership meeting like a woman walking onto a TED stage. Hair blown out, lipstick too bright, voice dripping with practiced warmth. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like to thank everyone for their flexibility during this realignment phase. Change is never easy, but it's always strategic." Translation: she'd gutted half the merger team and was calling it evolution. I sat at the far end of the glass conference table, hands folded, the only person not taking notes. She didn't invite me. HR did, by mistake. And I didn't correct them. "Devin will lead systems integration?" she continued, flashing a smile at the guy who once asked me how to export a CSV. "Tara will oversee client communications, and Mitchell will manage resource allocation. She paused at my name, hesitated, then clicked to the next slide. Rachel will continue supporting legacy documentation, reporting directly to facilities until her offboarding is finalized post-transition. Facilities. My throat stayed still, but the air in the room shifted. Everyone knew what that meant. Janitorial purgatory for people they didn't know how to fire. No one made eye contact. Devin stared at his laptop like it had the answers to life. Mitchell rubbed his temples. Melissa just smiled wider, mistaking silence for victory. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. By the time the meeting ended, I already had what I needed: motive, method, and witnesses. Back at my desk, the whispers started. Not the loud kind, but the subtle Slack pings. You okay? What happened? Did she really move you under facilities? Then came the ping from Ava. 3 screenshots. Melissa bragging in the merger channel. The roadmap I developed for Titan Freight will be our gold standard moving forward. Underneath, Devin had replied, "Didn't Rachel build that?" Melissa answered, "She contributed, but the strategic framework was mine." Contributed? Like I was a barista who handed her the latte while she drafted genius on a napkin. I typed back to Ava, "Keep everything encrypted." She replied with a skull emoji. That's when the bonus whispers started. Equity top-ups, new titles, retention bonuses for Melissa's core team. The same team now sitting on the shoulders of work I'd written, coded, and certified. I didn't bother confirming it. I knew. I'd seen this playbook before. Power loves paperless decisions, until paper starts talking. So I opened my own folder. Continuity. Inside it were contracts, timelines, email trails, version logs. Every artifact proving who built what. The metadata didn't lie. My name was on the architecture of the deal. Every file, every timestamp, every revision. Melissa could own the meetings. I owned the evidence. That night, I stayed late. The office emptied out, leaving only the hum of servers and the blinking light of the copy machine. I printed a few key pages, not for drama, but insurance. The kind of paper that doesn't burn easy. When I looked up, the lights of downtown Chicago blinked through the glass like tiny courtroom spotlights. I smiled faintly. She wanted my silence. She was about to get my signature instead. The next morning, I drafted a meeting invite. Subject line: Legacy Documentation Review. Quick clarification. Harmless, innocuous. The kind of thing that wouldn't even ping her radar. Recipients: Titan Freight's General Counsel, Laura Green, and her deputy. Within minutes, Laura accepted. Her reply was short, sharp. Dangerous. Always happy to chat with the adults in the room. I leaned back in my chair. It was time to remind everyone exactly who the adults were. The call started like any other compliance check. Pleasant, polite, the kind of professional small talk designed to hide the knife. Laura Green appeared on my screen from her home office, the background filled with tidy legal binders and a framed diploma from Columbia Law. "Rachel?" she said with that dry warmth lawyers use when they already know where a conversation's headed. "How are you holding up over there?" "Oh, you know," I said, swirling my coffee. Corporate musical chairs. I just wanted to confirm something minor before I hand off the documentation. Continuity certification. Clause 9(2)(c). I just want to make sure everything tied to my assurance officer role is still active. There was a pause. Not long, but deliberate. "You mean the clause specifying that no merger or transition can be completed without certification by the original assurance officer?" she asked, voice tightening slightly. "That's the one." Another beat of silence, then the faint sound of typing. "Has someone moved on that?" "Not officially," I said, keeping my tone casual. "Just noticed a few documents changing ownership internally." Before I flag anything on my side, I wanted to confirm that the clause is still considered active and binding. Laura's jaw flexed. Rachel, to be clear, it's not just binding, it's fundamental. If you're not certifying continuity, the deal cannot close. It's incomplete by definition. I'm aware, I said softly. She exhaled, the kind of tight, slow breath people take when they realize a storm's forming, just outside the window. Would you mind sending me confirmation that you're still the listed assurance officer? Just for my notes. I smiled. Already drafted. I clicked send. The PDF landed in her inbox with a neat timestamp and metadata showing I'd been the sole author of the original certification framework. Of course it's already drafted, she said, chuckling despite herself. I didn't tell her I was recording the call, too. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I trusted no one at my company anymore. Melissa was probably already whispering into legal's ear, trying to get someone junior enough to override a clause they hadn't even read. But there was no override. The entire merger, $190 million in client contracts, service licenses, escrow funds, was locked behind my certification, and my signature wasn't going anywhere. After we ended the call, I leaned back, staring at the gray corporate Zoom logo still frozen on my screen. Under my name, Rachel Monroe, contractor, legacy support. Cute. They thought they'd buried me in a basement folder. They didn't realize that folder was welded shut with their deal inside. By Thursday, the atmosphere in the executive wing had shifted. You could feel it. The buzz of arrogance had gone silent, replaced by whispers and half-closed doors. Calendar invites vanished mid-afternoon. Legal huddles popped up with no titles. A new drive folder appeared overnight. Clause 92C. Review urgent. My phone pinged. Ava, of course. They're freaking out, she texted, followed by a screenshot. Melissa messaging legal? Can we push a global override of continuity clauses before client counsel escalates? I nearly laughed. She still didn't understand the structure. There was no global override. Clause 9.2c was non-transferable. The only way through it was me. By mid-afternoon, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject line, contract review, final sign-off required. It was polite, corporate, and desperate. They wanted me at the table again, not because they valued my insight, but because the merger couldn't breathe without my consent. I read it twice, then typed my response. Happy to attend. On one condition, the session must be recorded, full transcript enabled, no exceptions, no reply for an hour. Then finally, recording confirmed. That's when I smiled, not out of joy, but precision. This wasn't revenge yet. This was leverage, crystallized and sharp. I didn't need to raise my voice or send threats. I just needed to let the contract speak for me. And when it did, it would echo louder than any boardroom speech Melissa had ever rehearsed. The next morning, my inbox was a graveyard of panic. Meeting invites, unsigned memos, and quick clarifications stacked like digital apologies. At 9 a.m. sharp, I logged into the review session. Clean shirt, camera on, posture steady. The call grid blinked to life. Client legal, outside counsel, escrow reps, Titan Freight's team, and our executives. And there she was, Melissa. Her smile stretched tight like plastic wrap over spoiled food. Good morning, everyone, she began, voice syrupy enough to rot enamel. Before we finalize, I want to thank you for your patience during this transition. We're excited to complete the merger with Norwell Systems. Her tone danced over the chaos she'd caused. I said nothing. Laura Green, the client's general counsel, was the first to cut through the fluff. She leaned forward slightly, glasses catching the light. Before we proceed, she said, we need to review a small but significant clause. Clause 9.2c, Continuity Certification. She read from the document with surgical precision. All transitions of service relating to Titan Freight Systems Must retain certification by the original assurance officer listed in the executed 2022 agreement. Certification is non-transferable and required for service activation. No certification, no continuity, no continuity, no payout. The silence was almost physical. You could hear someone's mouse click in the background. Melissa blinked, smiled too fast, and said, "Of course, that's just procedural language. Continuity here refers to institutional operations, not necessarily—" Laura cut her off. "No, Melissa, it's explicit. The assurance officer is named Rachel Monroe, and the clause was inserted at our firm's request. It's not symbolic. It's contractual." Someone from Norwell's due diligence team unmuted. His nameplate read, Jonathan Ellis. His voice was flat, precise. Who approved the removal of Ms. Monroe from project oversight? It wasn't a question. It was an autopsy. Melissa's expression cracked. The transition plan was managed under my department," she stammered. "It fell within the Q2 reorg protocol." "That wasn't my question," Ellis replied. "Who signed the approval?" Her silence was the answer. I leaned forward slightly. "No approval was documented because no one reviewed the contract before the reorganization," I said calmly. Ellis didn't reply. He just wrote something down, then muted himself again. You could practically hear careers evaporating. Laura folded her hands. "So, unless Ms. Monroe is restored as assurance officer and signs certification, the merger cannot proceed." Melissa tried to recover. "We can certainly adjust timelines." "No," Laura interrupted. "We'll pause the deal until compliance is restored." I didn't gloat. I didn't move. I just unmuted and spoke clearly. "For the record, I have not been requested to sign the certification. I have not waived my authority, and the clause remains active." The line went dead quiet. One of the Norwell execs exhaled a soft, almost reverent Jesus. Someone else muttered something about escrow freezes. And just like that, the $190 million deal Melissa had paraded through investor decks was frozen in place, untouchable, locked behind my signature. Melissa's smirk vanished completely, replaced by that hollow, faraway look people get when they realize they've walked straight into a trap they built themselves. By 11 a.m., internal Slack channels were lighting up like a digital bonfire. Merger paused. Compliance issue. Clause 9.2c flagged by client legal. Continuity certification missing. I didn't need to read the rest. The message was clear. No signature, no merger, no bonus. And the only person holding the pen was the one they'd tried to bury. By afternoon, the company's official line hit everyone's inbox. Merger temporarily suspended pending compliance review. Unofficially, frozen solid. That evening, my phone buzzed. A new message from Laura. Subject line, confidential discussion. Her email was short. Titan Freight requests your return as assurance officer. If you're not part of this merger, neither are we. Let us know what you need. No apology. Just leverage. The language I speak best. I stared at the screen for a long moment, the quiet hum of victory settling over me like static before a storm. The same people who'd erased me now couldn't move an inch without me, and I wasn't done yet. By the next morning, my inbox looked like a corporate confessional booth. Subject lines stacked on top of each other. Need to clarify deliverables, urgent compliance follow-up, quick question on assurance roles, apology for miscommunication. The same executives who hadn't returned my calls 2 weeks earlier were suddenly reaching out for alignment. Nothing motivates humility like frozen money. I didn't respond. Not yet. I read each email the way a lawyer studies evidence. Detached, methodical, slightly amused. Then came the one that mattered, from Laura Green herself. Titan Freight would like to formally request your reinstatement as assurance officer for the duration of the merger. If your role is not restored, our participation will remain on hold. Please, confirm your terms. There it was. Power restored in black and white. I leaned back in my chair. let the moment breathe, then began typing. Thank you for your trust. I'm open to rejoining in an advisory capacity under direct contract with Titan Freight. Please route discussions through your outside counsel. I sent it. No emojis, no exclamation points. Just leverage delivered politely. The reply came within an hour. Approved. Our legal team will formalize by end of day. By noon, the paperwork hit my inbox. Special Compliance Advisor to Titan Freight Systems, reporting directly to General Counsel, effective immediately. Compensation, back pay, profit share, retroactive to Q1. The same quarter Melissa's realignment had exiled me to facilities. HR tried to spin it like an internal success story, a strategic collaboration, but I saw the panic behind the smiles. Because reinstating me meant admitting they'd mismanaged a merger and nearly triggered a contractual breach. And there's no PowerPoint slide for that. Word spread faster than an office rumor about layoffs. By 3 p.m., Ava texted me a screenshot of an internal announcement. VP of Strategic Operations Melissa Crane placed on administrative leave pending compliance review. That's HR language for, we're just figuring out who gets her parking spot. Under the post, someone had commented, guess realignment works both ways. I laughed for the first time in weeks. It wasn't loud, just that quiet, disbelieving laugh you let out when the universe delivers perfect symmetry. They had tried to erase me, to rewrite a story I built line by line, and now they couldn't finish a sentence without my name in it. Still, I didn't post anything. I didn't update LinkedIn or drop a victory quote about resilience. I didn't need to. The contract spoke louder than any humble brag ever could. That evening, while the office scrambled to contain the fallout, I poured myself a glass of red wine and opened the original agreement. My initials sat neatly beside every clause, every timestamp. Proof, not just of authorship, but endurance. They'd treated me like a disposable part. But in corporate law, disposables don't get written into non-transferable clauses. The next morning, the apologies arrived. Long paragraphs dressed in passive voice. We understand how this may have been perceived. We regret any miscommunication that led to confusion. Your contributions remain valued and visible. Translation: we burned the bridge and are now realizing you own the river. Then came the NDAs. 4 versions in 24 hours, each with slightly different wording, but the same intent. Silence, non-disparagement, retroactive confidentiality, no discussion of internal disputes. Funny how suddenly everyone wants quiet once your words start costing them money. I ignored them, at least for now. Let them sweat. The more they waited, the clearer it became who really held control. Late afternoon, Ava messaged again. You'll love this one, she wrote. Melissa told the review team Clause 9.2c was added by an intern. I blinked, reread, and laughed outright. An intern? Yep, Ava typed back. Said it was inserted by a junior paralegal during compliance. Claims she didn't realize it was binding. It was pure desperation. The kind of lie born when the walls are already closing in. I opened my drawer and pulled out the original hard copy of the clause, the one with my signature in red ink and the email trail stapled behind it. Time to escalate, I typed. Ava replied instantly. Popcorn ready. I scheduled a meeting. Addendum review. Clause escalation. Attendees, Titan Freight Legal, Norwell Compliance, our internal board counsel. Full recording required. No more whispers. No more side chats. If Melissa wanted to pretend an intern built the clause, we'd let her explain it to 3 law firms at once. And this time, every word would be on record. The joint review session was set for 9 a.m. sharp, but the real show started the moment I clicked Join Meeting. The grid filled with lawyers, executives, and auditors from both sides. Titan Freight's legal counsel, Norwell's compliance team, and our own jittery board members. No small talk, no smiles. Just the cold hum of tension. Melissa wasn't on camera yet. Typical. When she finally joined, Her lighting was perfect, her blazer sharper than her focus, her smile brittle enough to crack. "Good morning, everyone," said the board's outside counsel, a man named Peter Klein, who always spoke like every sentence cost a billable hour. "We're here to finalize open items related to continuity and confirm there are no remaining compliance conflicts." I unmuted. "Before we begin," I said, "I'd like to review a supplementary clause relevant to continuity enforcement. Section 10.3D, Addendum 4, dated March 3, 2022. Melissa's face twitched. I saw it. 1 millimeter of panic. Klein frowned slightly. "Please proceed, Miss Monroe." I opened the document on screen share. The PDF appeared in crisp resolution, the highlighted paragraph glowing like a neon trap. I read slowly, deliberately. In the event of a breach or violation of continuity clauses following execution of a signed letter of intent, all executive and managerial bonuses tied to said merger shall be rendered null and void and must be repaid within 30 business days of written notice. Silence, the kind that isn't quiet, it vibrates. Someone coughed off camera. A Norwell attorney leaned in toward his mic, whispering something muted but clearly not meant for public hearing. I continued, "This language protects both parties in the event of, let's say, unmonitored ambition." No one laughed. The head of Norwell's compliance team adjusted his glasses. "This clause? Was it approved during initial negotiations?" "Yes," Laura Green answered before anyone from my company could speak. "At the client's request, Ms. Monroe drafted the operational version. We reviewed and signed off." Melissa tried to interject, voice shaky. "That clause wasn't enforced. It's old language, internal, and doesn't apply post-realignment." I scrolled down and pointed with my cursor. "It applies upon any violation of the continuity clause. The merger reorganization removed the assurance officer, me, without client approval. That's the violation." Peter Klein leaned back, fingers steepled. "Ms. Crane," he said slowly, "were you aware of this language when you restructured the merger team?" Her face went pale. "It wasn't raised at the time. It's in the signed packet," I replied evenly. "Time-stamped, logged, and filed under your department's oversight." Another silence. You could almost hear the collective sound of bonuses evaporating. Finally, one of Norwell's senior attorneys, an older man with a face carved out of patience, spoke. "Then pair this clause. If continuity was breached, any bonuses tied to merger progress are void." He didn't say forfeited. He said void, erased. Melissa blinked rapidly. "That can't be right." But the legal team was already scrolling through their copies. The evidence was airtight. The signatures, the addendum, my metadata. All roads led to her department, her approval, her downfall. I muted myself and sipped my coffee. Let them do the work. Controlled revenge isn't about shouting. It's about letting the documents talk while you enjoy the silence. Klein finally spoke again. "Given these findings, I recommend we move to immediate enforcement of Clause 10.3D. All bonuses distributed under the previous structure must be retracted pending audit." Melissa's camera went black. She'd logged off. I didn't smile. Not yet. When the session ended, the board circulated a motion for immediate review of her oversight decisions. Corporate speak for pack your desk. By afternoon, her company account was disabled. The Slack status that once read always closing deals now said user not found. Ava texted me a screenshot. "You did it," she wrote. "No," I replied. "The contract did." That night, I stayed late, not to celebrate, but to finish the work she'd abandoned. The merger still needed a signature, but this time, every clause would be honored. Every word counted. And the next morning, when the board chair asked me for final certification, I didn't hesitate. I opened the contract, drew a neat line under my name, and wrote the words that sealed everything. Approved upon termination of VP Melissa Crane. Then I slid the pen across the table. You want the signature? I said. Use your own accountability clause. They voted on the spot. 5-4, 3 against. Motion passed. Melissa Crane, terminated, effective immediately. No farewell email, no corporate eulogy, just deletion. I picked up the pen, signed the assurance certification, and the merger unlocked that same afternoon.